Hey Crystal Lover, I'm Ashley Leavy of the Love and Light School of Crystal Therapy, and in this video I'm talking to you all about the healing properties of Snowflake Obsidian, which is a great crystal for balance and courage. So Snowflake Obsidian, you may be familiar with, looks a bit like this. It's black with kind of a white mottled appearance. It has these little white snowflakes on it, and I have a rough piece here as well for you to see. And these are actually little cristobalite crystals that are growing on the surface of the black obsidian. And actually here's some that are quite large in appearance. So this is a really interesting and unique crystal formation. Some of the best snowflake obsidian comes from Utah in the US, but it's also commonly found in Argentina. And I always like to start these little crystal property videos with a healing message or affirmation from the crystal. So here's an affirmation that you can work with while you're working with your own snowflake obsidian stones. I create sacred space in my home to recharge and rejuvenate myself when I'm feeling out of alignment. So when you're feeling unbalanced, you're feeling really scattered, overwhelmed, stressed out, anxious, reach for some snowflake obsidian because it's such a great crystal for bringing that balance. It has the blend of dark and light right on the stone itself, and so it's a perfect stone for finding harmony, kind of representing the yin and yang energies. Here's one carved into a little moon shape as well. So when you are feeling a little bit scattered and unbalanced, you can work with Snowflake Obsidian, work with that affirmation to remind you to take a moment in your sacred space to get yourself recentered, recharged, and rejuvenated. But there are some other amazing qualities of Snowflake Obsidian as well. So it protects you from negative energy by blocking it from entering your aura. It helps expose areas of yourself that need growth and development. So it really shows the shadow side. Remember, in Snowflake Obsidian, we have that balance between dark and light. It also helps with past life work, and it can keep you really grounded and centered during any kind of intense spiritual work. So it's a great crystal to work with for any type of shamanic practices. It also facilitates compassion and empathy while maintaining your boundaries, and it helps to encourage independence. So if you've been finding that you're a little apprehensive or nervous or scared to kind of strike out on your own in any area of your life, Snowflake Obsidian can be such a good companion crystal to give you the courage to do that. Now, it's also sometimes called cristobalite included obsidian, although of course the more common name is Snowflake Obsidian, or sometimes it's called phenocryst included obsidian. This is a really positive stone to work with when you're kind of at a crossroads as well, when you need help with decision making. It can really put things into perspective, put things into black and white, so to speak, so you can really understand the way that you should be moving forward. Now, I do have a little bit more information I want to share about obsidian from the staff at my shop, Mimosa Books and Gifts. They say obsidian is the most abundant form of naturally occurring glass, which means it's not technically a crystal. It's the result of volcanic lava that's cooled very, very quickly. And technically, it might have any composition at all, but it's usually glass with inclusions of hematite and rhyolite. Now that's typical obsidian. But Snowflake Obsidian, as I mentioned, contains tiny white clusters of cristobalite, the ones that were really easy to see in these rough pieces. And it forms when over time the obsidian begins to crystallize, so the actual natural glass part, and then the snow, the cristobalite crystals, which are actually the same substance as quartz but with a distinctive crystal structure, they start to form within that obsidian matrix. And as the obsidian starts to weather, it then eventually turns into something else, going through this entire really interesting process of the rock cycle. Now, because obsidian is a natural glass, you can see here this piece is quite thin. You can actually see through it. So although we usually call this like a black obsidian, it is kind of actually brown or gray, and when you hold a thin piece up to the light, you can see through it. But what you can also see here is that this is a very sharp edge. And because it's really easy to chip and form into a sharp point, it's been quite an invaluable material for tool making throughout history, which really helped contribute to the evolution of the human race. Many ancient peoples used obsidian in the form of arrowheads, axe heads, and other tools. But many cultures also use this to make mirrors and figurines. So it was actually carved into objects that were used as talismans and as means of divination. And in fact, one way that some archaeologists have been able to trace the development of trade throughout history is by testing the composition of obsidian objects that were found along different trade routes to find out where it originated and thus how far it had traveled. So more recently, obsidian lore, of course, has made its way into the popular dragon glass in the show Game of Thrones, but it's also known as the Witch's Blade. And if this stone comes to you, if you're really drawn to it or attracted to it, it might indicate that you've been experiencing a time of cloudiness or darkness in your life that will soon part. And it speaks a very ancient language. This stone is one that has so much deep wisdom to share with us. So if we listen really closely and pay attention to what it's trying to tell us in our life, again, paying attention to our shadow side and that balance of dark and light, it can really help us move forward. Now, obsidian does break easily, and like I mentioned, it has very sharp edges, so be careful if you're handling a rough piece that you don't get cut, and keep this in mind, of course, if you're letting any children handle these stones. In fact, the tumbled stones are much preferred for kids, and they really show off the pattern quite nicely, so the tumbled stones are great for that. Now, one last thing about obsidian, I might be really careful when buying obsidian from sellers that are selling it in really bright colors, lots of different colors like lavender, yellow, aqua. These are actually not natural obsidian at all. They are fakes. They are just man-made glass, and they're called obsidian because obsidian is technically glass, but they're not made by Mother Earth, and they don't have the same healing energies that a natural obsidian stone would have. So I hope that this video helps shed a little bit of light on the healing energies of Snowflake Obsidian for you. I'm Ashley Leavy of the Love and Light School of Crystal Therapy. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, crystal blessings.